The global solar industry has grown into the giant of the energy world that it is today by virtue of international collaboration and innovation. And we're turning the spotlight on two American companies today, one that's very well established and one that's pursuing potentially disruptive solar cell and module tech. Welcome to the Smarter podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Gifford. One of the highlights of the Smarter Europe conference and exhibition is that it draws in speakers and exhibitors and attendees from all over the clean energy world. So it's an ideal opportunity to catch up with some of the brightest minds in the business. We have two guests on the podcast today, both from the United States, but at very different stages of development and also parts of the solar value chain. LA-based Calux is a developer of PV perovskite on glass technology, and it's making strides towards commercialization, and in fact has signed a multi-gigawatt production deal with a compatriot manufacturer, Solux. Aaron Thurlow from Calux joins the pod in just a moment. But first, let's hear from one of the legends of the US solar industry. Nextpower president Howard Wenger has more than 35 years of experience in solar leadership, including positions at hugely influential companies like SunPower, Powerlight, and Solaria. And with Nextpower continuing its trend of acquisitions and an agreement to purchase Zimmermann, which was revealed in Munich this year, his insight into the company's expansion strategy is very much worth checking out. If you're listening to or watching the Smarter podcast for the first time, please subscribe, follow, and leave a rating or review. It's the best way to support the podcast and help set the record straight on solar's transformative progress. And as always, you can get in touch with us anytime at podcast@thesmartery.com. Well, the jackets are off here at the Smarter 2026. The temperatures are high and international guests are joining the exhibition from right around the world. From California, Howard Wenger, the president of Nextpower, joins me. Thanks for joining the Smarter podcast.
Really great to be here. Thank you.
Well, Howard, I would say the last maybe 12 to 18 months, it's been almost difficult to keep up with the pace of announcements from Nextpower. The one this week particularly relates to Europe with the agreement to acquire Zimmermann, a really prominent name in mounting structures in the European marketplace. What do you think it brings to Nextpower?
Well, you nailed it. They're very respected. Zimmermann, we've known them for many, many years. They've been around. They were founded 16 years ago, built as a family business from the ground up, if you will. They have over 100 people now and a leading position in the German market and one of the acknowledged leaders in the Europe market in general. The things that, first of all, when we look to combine with a company, we're very interested in the people. That's the first thing. Is there a connection between us and them? Are they engineering oriented? Because we're a very technical company, engineering led, very focused on the customer. So our innovation comes from the customer inward to the company, and we innovate to provide value to customers. And with Zimmermann, we had a very close match on all of these things. Check, 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 check. Great connection, very well-run company, profitable company, great innovations, great products, and a great market footprint. So the match is ideal.
And from a technology standpoint, of course, Zimmermann has a real track record in fixed tilt, right? And Nextpower, as formerly Nextracker, was built on single-axis tracking. What does this really mean in terms of how you will work with European customers?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to assure all Zimmermann customers that they're going to continue to hold all of their products and offer them and support them, and we'll be behind supporting them in any way we possibly can. And we really will be one team, one company when it closes. The deal closes. We signed it and announced it just 2 days ago, coincident with Intersolar here in Munich. But it'll close after sort of perfunctory, normal regulatory approval. We expect that to happen next quarter, so in the next few months. And so, yes, they're a fixed tilt company at the start. That's how they began. And it's not just a fixed tilt system. Not every fixed tilt system is created equally. They have some really unique intellectual property, IP, and methodologies around their fixed tilt that make it very attractive, very easy to install and to maintain. And then from there, they didn't stop. They kept innovating. They had a 1P tracker, a high density tracker, which is complementary to our system. They have a 2P tracker, which is great for agri-photovoltaics or agri-PV. And they also have other systems like extensive carport systems and floating PV, which is quite interesting. So the products that they have are very complementary to what we have. And so you mentioned cross-selling. We're able to do that quite easily. We can sell their products, they can sell our products, and then we have very good market footprint together. So it's a good fit.
Yeah, so it's kind of an addition to Nextpower's technical capabilities and team here in Europe.
That's right.
Okay, well, this is also the Smartery 2026 is the first show here in Munich where the Nextpower brand has been revealed, and the kind of platform approach that Nextpower has been taking over the last couple of months is really demonstrated to the market in full detail. What's the reception been like?
Fantastic. And what I just learned at this moment was they changed the name of the conference. It's no longer Intersolar. It's called Smartery.
It's a little bit more nuanced than that. So there's Intersolar still exists, but there's an umbrella, the Smartery, which includes an energy storage show, an e-mobility show, a kind of software show.
Got you.
So that's the strategy.
That's perfect timing with our strategy because we have still Nextracker inside of us. Nothing's changed there. We have the global leading tracker, the most advanced tracker. We're going to keep innovating on that tracker platform because it's the core DNA of the company. But we changed the umbrella, if you will, to Nextpower. We changed the name of the company. All of the people, the board, everything is the same. But what's changed is our strategy, which is to have, as you mentioned, a complete unified engineered solution from the tracker and foundation all the way through to the inverter for solar power systems. And now we've added storage. So we envision a time where we're delivering the complete integrated hardware and software solution. Everything but the panel will come from us, and the panels can come from others. And our system is compatible with all of panels that are offered on the market. And then we will also provide turnkey storage solutions.
And in terms of Europe, one of the acquisitions is at Zygor Corporation, the power electronics company, headquartered in Spain, also has a very strong US footprint as well. That also strengthens your European team, your headcount here, your operations here. So it really it represents, at least from where I'm seeing it, a deeper engagement with Europe.
We are, I think you could say we're tripling down on Europe because it's a very important, diverse, interesting market that's very committed to clean energy and electrification. And so it meets our company's strategy very well. And by tripling down, it's not only the investments we're making, but we will triple our headcount with the Zimmermann acquisition and the Zigger acquisition in Spain. They have offices in Valencia, Zigger does. Zimmermann has it in Germany, southern Germany. We have our headquarters in Madrid, so it's a very nice complementary footprint. So we'll have over 300 people in combination, going from 100 to 300. So 3 to 1.
Well, it's been a period of rapid growth right across the board,
Yes.
including battery energy storage with Prevalon. That was just a few weeks ago. Now, I remember, don't have your track record in PV, but I've got 15 years or so. And I remember Nextpower working with batteries at various points in the company's evolution. And I think I dug up an old data sheet one day when I was poking around the internet, as nosy journalists are wont to do. But this is a different type of battery investment, because Prevalon are very much not so much the cell or primary energy storage provider. They're an integrator of energy storage systems. I understand this is a really important time, particularly in the US market, for energy integrators and battery energy service providers with this data center boom and AI boom. How important was that for the strategy of the Prevalon acquisition?
Really, really important, because the company's DNA is evolving at Nextpower. And if you looked 3 years ago, we were really focused on civil and mechanical engineering. And I mentioned we're an engineering-led company, but we're now in power engineering and electrical engineering as well. We had some of that in the company because we do have electrical systems in our company to control the trackers, and especially on the controller, the motor controller, and the software that controls the tracker. But part of the reason why we did these acquisitions is to inject DNA, very experienced people at Prevalon. They came from Mitsubishi Heavy Industry, from the power division. These are power system engineers and large-scale power, utility-scale power. Our founder and CEO, Dan Sugar, is an electrical engineer. I'm a engineer, a systems engineer, and I've known Dan for 37 years. And we've have a lot of experience in solar, not only trackers, but the complete solution. We've done this before in our career. So we actually fielded the first IGBT inverter back in the early 90s. And so we have a lot of experience with inverters. And really where it came out to drive this strategy was listening to our customers, because inverters are a pain point for them. I think they've come a long way, but it's still a pain point. It's not only their operation, but keeping them operating. It's not only the spot efficiencies are very high, measured in the high 90s, like 98%, 98.5%, 99% efficiency, amazing. But you have to keep them online. And so we think just with our customers, most of them today, the vast majority are doing storage, and they all need inverters. And so they've asked us to do more. And that's why that was really the impetus for changing our strategy, listening to our customers. And that's a hallmark of the company. But Prevalon, just one final word for now on that is we're super excited about them. They have already deployed 6 gigawatt hours of storage. I'll call them a diamond in the rough, which we seem to be pretty good about finding. I didn't even know their name 9 months ago. It's amazing. And that's because they were only spun out of Mitsubishi 18 months ago. Okay. And so once we actually got referred to them by one of our customers, said, you guys should really look at them. And that's something that we do a lot, is really check in with our customers. One in particular referred us to them. And the more we saw with their team and the ethos and what they've done and where they're going, it's really exciting. They have relationships with the hyperscalers already. Sure. And they have great technology that serves them and serves the broader solar and storage market.
Yeah, because there's this trend to kind of behind the meter systems for data centers, or sometimes called direct wire solar systems as well, right?
Yeah.
That you can accelerate the development of a data system by having on-site generation buffered by battery energy storage.
Yeah. Would you like me to expand on that a little bit?
Please do, yeah.
Okay, so these data centers, of course, we're all now familiar with what a data center is and what it's doing for us with AI and these AI tools. The inference data centers, the learning ones, have incredible fluctuations of power. within 10 milliseconds, a fraction of a second. They can go from 20% full demand to 100% in a fraction of a second. So conventional rotating equipment machine, like a recip engine that's serving the data center, and they want 5 nines of reliability. Okay, that means they can tolerate an outage of the length for the year for maybe 5 minutes of total outage for a whole year. So they need continuous power, and they demand it. But the rotating engines can't help their data centers during these fluctuations. In fact, those fluctuations can damage that equipment. So one of the things that Prevalon has is a shock absorber that is a storage system that sits between the data center and the rotating equipment. And if you've ever been in an electric vehicle, you press on the accelerator, bam, like the car is shooting out because it can have so much power density. It's like massive power density, meaning it can deliver power, large amounts in a very short period of time. So it's able to cycle up and down and be a buffer for the rotating equipment. So in concert with the rotating equipment, you have continuous high-grade power, and that's something that Prevalon brings.
Yeah, we've seen that with batteries and their ability to supply frequency regulation markets.
Yeah.
Right? As soon as you install batteries, they just kind of eat the market straight away because they're so effective from 1 to 0 like that, right?
Super effective. And like entire state governments we're seeing in the U.S., there has been negative energy in the U.S., meaning like negative pricing. So shedding solar power, and actually if the solar generators keep generating, they actually have to pay the grid to take the energy. So what's happening in places like Texas and California, where you had high penetration of solar, they're putting in massive amounts of battery storage, between 15 and 20 gigawatts per state. And that is absorbing the solar and able to keep the lights on without having to dispatch generators. So we have no power outages now in California, and it's kept the lights on in Texas because of the battery storage and the solar working symbiotically. And that's why we got in. That's another reason why we got into storage, because the more storage you do, the more solar you can do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The more solar you do, the more storage you need. So it's like a positive feedback loop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we need it in Europe as well, right? I think that
absolutely
last year in Germany, I think the figure was something like 400 hours of negative pricing for the year.
Right.
We're seeing in Spain record low solar capture rates. This is becoming a feature right across Europe.
It is. And we see that trend. And so with Zimmermann and their footprint, and then with Prevalon and the storage system, we can offer that to Germany.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in terms of expansion, the solar industry, the history of the solar industry is full of stories of companies that have burnt very bright and kind of burnt out, particularly on the module side. Those kind of the first big gigawatt scale manufacturers, there's very few of them around, at least in their original form. And in the US, kind of SunEdison is the company that is perhaps best known for rapid expansion.
Right.
And then it all coming undone. Is that a cautionary tale for leadership at Nextpower for you?
I think they're cautionary tales for the industry. You have to really pay attention to that. I've been in solar power 40 years, and I've competed against, I was president and CEO of SunPower Systems as part of SunPower, and we were competing head-to-head against SunEdison. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of lessons learned there. I left SunPower in 2016, but and retired supposedly. But Dan sucked me back into
How's that working out?
Yeah. But I'm working harder than ever and loving it because of the culture of Nextpower. But we are not going to buy wind energy company. We're not going to be in residential, okay? There are a lot of things we're not going to do. We're going to focus on large-scale power, solar and storage, period, okay? And that is very focusing for a company. We're not biting off more than we can chew. We're making these acquisitions. We've stood up an internal integration office with a very professional integration office to integrate these companies and make sure that we hit the ground running on day one through 100 and beyond. And so we're very confident about what we're doing, and we've learned a lot along the way. And so really excited about the future of the company. It's really, in a way, not a relaunch, but it's a next stage of the company to go from being tracker only to a fully integrated solution. One of the things we talk about is customers don't want tires and a windshield and an engine. They want the whole car. So that's what we're doing. Fully integrated hardware, software for solar and storage.
Well, I've heard you once talk about kind of the evolution of the industry as well on a podcast, the Solar Journey podcast. And you were talking about kind of ambitions that solar companies or clean energy companies should be working to become energy majors, right? These fossil fuel incumbents that we know very well. Where do you think we are in terms of that journey?
Oh, man, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's the core thing that gets us up every day. Because we believe in science at our company, and we believe that global warming is a threat, and that we need to drive to maybe it's not zero carbon, but a near zero carbon electric grid. And we need to electrify everything as quickly as we can, but with clean energy. So that is core to us. Fossil fuel has a role. But we would like to see it be a bridge technology, not that renewables is the bridge to a fossil fuel future for this reason. We deeply believe we have to take care of the planet and keep it inhabitable and thriving with clean air. Everybody unifies around the principles of clean energy, clean air. That resonates with everybody. Clean water, food that's not contaminated. So energy that's ubiquitous, okay, and not limiting. So what historically has been a very bipartisan thing, clean energy has been. If you look at governments, both sides of aisles and people have unified around energy independence and clean energy. We think it's a matter of time that we'll be I think we're closer to that than we really, I think we're pretty close to that actually, even today.
Well, it's an exciting
That's
vision.
an optimistic view, but that's the way I feel and we feel.
Well, it's encouraging to hear. Howard Wenger, the president of Nextpower, thank you very much for your time. I could have used much more of your time. We might have to catch up again on the Smartery podcast. And thank you for watching.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm really grateful for what you do. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. Well, the future of solar manufacturing is under discussion here at the Smartery 2026 in Munich. And that invariably means perovskites at one point or another for PV cells and modules. So it's a great pleasure to be joined by Aaron Thurlow, who's the Chief Commercial Officer with US perovskite developer Calux. Aaron, thanks so much for joining.
Well, thank you so much for having us and having me here today.
Well, tell me, perovskite and commercialization, that's the big question, right? There's so much promise from these devices.
Yes.
I'll just jump right into the deep end. How close are we to commercialization from your perspective?
Well, I think commercialization encompasses a bunch of different stages, right? So I would say that we're at the beginning stages, right? So Calux has been in production now for a couple of years in our initial factory outside of Los Angeles. And today we're producing 2 square meter glass. Primarily that's going into test projects at this point.
Okay, and that's outdoor testing, or tell me a bit about it.
Absolutely. So yes, so we're essentially, you can think of this as the outdoor testing stage. Mm-hmm. At the same time, we're in discussions with companies. We had an announcement a couple months ago now that was significant with a company called Solex, 3 gigawatts over 5 years. So potentially the largest in the world in terms of commercial deals. So we're in that stage of early stages of commercialization.
Okay, and tell me about the Klux technology, right? Because perovskites is still very much a dynamic technology landscape. There's lots of different architectures and materials being explored. What are you doing at Klux?
So at Klux, we're doing the perovskite directly on the glass. This is different than doing it directly on the silicon solar cell. And there's some significant advantages, I think, to doing it on the glass. One is that we're cell agnostic. So we can work with PERC, TOPCon, HJT, even back contact. So we don't have a preference for the cell type underneath. We have a lot more flexibility in that approach. You can think of all the investments that have already been made in CapEx. Those don't have to be redone. We simply, essentially, transform the top glass into an energy producing layer. And you can think of perovskite, the layer is essentially like a thin film. So, the industry's done a lot with thin film over the years. This is just a different chemistry set in terms of creating that energy producing layer on the glass.
And from a technical standpoint, to have the perovskite layer directly onto the glass, it means that you avoid some of the challenges with getting the deposition onto a bottom cell if you're doing a perovskite onto a heterojunction cell.
Yes, and I'm not, I know just enough on the technical side to be dangerous, so I don't want to overstep. But I think that when you think about integrating perovskite onto the silicon cell, you're talking about a lot of different cell architecture potential challenges. And I think this is just a simpler approach. I think about commercialization, and there's been a lot of technical discussion on perovskites over the last 10 years. As it's emerged, there's a lot of promise. And I think it is the technology that, if we look out 10 years, will be dominant, right? It will take us beyond the theoretical limit of silicon. And silicon, we've done phenomenally well with. If you look downstairs at a lot of these booths with 25%, almost 25% modules, that's exceptional. Our initial commercial product will be 27%. And we're already today at 26. So we're essentially almost there. And if you look out 5 years from now, you'll easily be over 30%. But going back to the simplicity, I think from our perspective, being able to plug into the existing manufacturing. If you think about how many billions of dollars have gone into CapEx and gone into module manufacturing, by substituting in our glass, you immediately add 20% to the capacity or the output of your facility without any additional CapEx investments. If you're on the developer side, you lower your LCOE by 20%. That can be used for energy storage to get closer to 24/7 solar. So there's a tremendous amount of kind of impact that this technology and this approach provides.
Well, talking about the trade show hall here at the Smartery and at Intersolar, which is a part of the Smartery, there are some perovskite modules on display and some really innovative ones. I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard about an Oxford PV shingled module. So it really shows that some creativity and some novel architectures are being deployed with perovskite devices as well.
Yes. And that particular module you mentioned is in the Fraunhofer booth, and I had a chance to see it, and they did a great job. I think the way I like to think also about perovskites, it's not going to be just one company. So we're kind of rooting for everybody to be successful here. We're very happy, obviously, with our approach, and we think we have a really good approach to the market, but we're also excited to see perovskites on display and this kind of come up as a technology category that's important to the future of the industry.
Well, and when we're looking at manufacturing more broadly, manufacturing crystalline silicon modules outside of the US, India, China really isn't a viable concern in many parts of the world, just on a cost basis, on a competition basis, particularly if there aren't tariffs in place and other trade barriers. What do you think of the argument then that perovskite manufacturing could be an opportunity for Western manufacturers, technologists, equipment suppliers to play a more prominent role in the global solar supply chain?
I think it's a good argument. I think it's in some ways you could look at it as leveling the playing field to a certain extent. And I think it's, we have global customers. So we don't, we have a little bit of an agnostic view here, but I will say that, our initial factories will be likely be in the markets that have some protections. So the United States, India as an example.
Okay. Well, turning to applications then, also some novel applications have been suggested for perovskite devices. There's some for, tiny little perovskite devices,
yes,
for indoor applications and stuff like that. But that's really, really niche. But then also things like space applications for perovskite devices is something that I'm hearing more about.
I think you'll continue to hear more about space applications. And the reason why is because perovskites do well with the radiation in space, and they can be, it's a very, very thin layer. And so if you think about applying this to a flexible material that's super lightweight, what do you want for space? You want lightweight, right? So I think, we think about, our company's main focus is on terrestrial, but we've done some stuff in space. We've been in orbit, and there's certainly a lot of exciting applications for space.
And the traditional kind of space solar supply chain, right, was based around 3-5 kind of architectures like gallium arsenide, which is expensive, extremely high performance, does very well with the radiation, but I understand an extremely limited supply chain. And space industry is actually growing, right? SpaceX is the obvious example.
Exactly. Yeah, well, I think that space is, scaling very quickly, right? And also the size of the deployments are getting bigger. And so there's a tremendous opportunity. I think it's still small comparative to the terrestrial market, but it's a high value opportunity because even if you look at, some of the 3.5 technologies, and I'm not up to speed on what the current price points are, but I think, I recall in the past $300 to $500 a watt. So, perovskites, you could easily take that down, let's say even $20 a watt. Which would be, extremely, extremely high for terrestrial application. But for space, given the advantages on the weight and all that, is remarkable cost reduction.
Yeah, and it's also just scale as well, right? I also understand the 3.5 production capacity globally is tiny. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think you're spot on. So I think there's a lot of interest right now in the space applications, and I think that's healthy.
Now, what about cracking the durability nut, right? That's the most important factor, or the question you hear again and again when it comes to perovskite devices.
Yes.
Their kind of lack of stability over the long term. Even things like metastability in production is a challenge, right? In characterization. How close are we getting?
I think we're getting very close. I mean, I think, and I'm sure different companies are at different places with this. But what's really remarkable is if you just look at from an industry perspective, 10 years ago, you were talking about seconds or minutes. And now, we're into years. And if you look at the learning curve, I believe it's like a doubling almost every year. And so essentially, we're there. I think in the next couple of years, we'll be there.
Well, that's an exciting trajectory.
Yes.
to be on for the technology. Perovskite PV being developed by Calux in the United States. Aaron Thurlow, thank you very much for joining the Smartery podcast.
Thank you.
This podcast is a Climate Copy production. Nicole Schäfer is our producer and graphic designer. Ina Gossen, Wolfgang Weicht, and Peggy Herter-Zille from Solar Promotion support on coordination and marketing. Klaus Schulte directed and edited this special series from Munich this year, and Martin Mostert and Timothy Cowan were our videographers. Be sure to follow, like, and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you found us. If you're interested in the latest developments in solar energy, storage, and energy system integration, be sure to check out the Forum Solar Plus, taking place on the 24th to 25th of November in Berlin. Visit Forum Solar Plus website for details on registration and upcoming announcements. Get in touch with feedback, comments, or suggestions at podcast@thesmartery.com. I'm Jonathan Gifford, and thanks for joining me on another episode of the Smartery Podcast.